Welcome to this platform. So this video is a coverage of chapter 1 or topic 1 that is in the Igcse biology 0610, and this is for the latest syllabus for the exams in the year 2026, 2027 and 2028 for both core and the extended. So this is the detailed coverage of the topic, and at the end we are going to answer exam questions from the extended paper, that is paper 2. Multiple choice questions, so ranging from the year 2021 to 2025. So I urge you to stay up to the end. So characteristics and classification of living organisms. So what do we need to know about this part? Okay, so characteristics and classification of living organisms. Here we are looking at living organisms. Okay, so first thing first, we need to know that the study of living organisms is biology. So we start by defining biology. So biology is simply the study of living things or living organisms. Now, when you talk of living organisms or living things, we are normally referring to animals. We are referring to animals and plants. And therefore, in our study, we are going to focus on animals and plants. Now, what are the characteristics that enables us to know that indeed this is a living organism? In other words, what helps us to categorize something as something living? Okay, so there are 7 characteristics organism must have to be recognized as living things or living organism. And now these 7 characteristics, each and every organism should possess or should show these characteristics. So in other words, all living organisms should possess these characteristics. And just from here, that is how even questions are phrased. Which of the characteristics occurs in all living organisms? So if you spot any of these that we are going to discuss here, you should be able to tell that indeed is a characteristics of all living organisms. Now, for easy mastery or for easy understanding, or rather for easy remembering, the 7 characteristics of living organisms can be simplified in the mnemonic Mrs. Grain. So Mrs. Grain helps us to remember all the characteristics of living organisms. Now, what is this Mrs. Grain? So in this Mrs. Grain, M stands for movement. So you need to know that from Mrs. Grain, M stands for movement. Then R stands for respiration. Now you need to know that there are 2 R's here. It doesn't matter the one that you give respiration or the one that you give reproduction. So the first one we are going to say is respiration. Then S for sensitivity. Now, sensitivity is also known as irritability. So in the case you find irritability, sensitivity, one and the same. Then growth. Growth is also one of the characteristics. Then another R is reproduction. Then we have E, excretion, N, nutrition. And I guess up to this point, you should be able to remember these, or you wouldn't forget. You should be able to remember these. Like I said, they are very important when it comes to our question, especially paper 2, those that are writing extended. All right. Now, let us look at each of these one by one. Let us look at each of these one by one. So we are saying Mrs. Grain is simply movement, respiration, sensitivity, growth, reproduction, excretion, and nutrition. And each and every organism that is a living organism possess all these characteristics. Now, let us start with movement. What is movement? So movement in this case is just an action by an organism or part of an organism causing a change of position or place. That is what we call movement. So movement is simply the action by an organism or part of an organism causing a change or position of an organism. Or we can simply say is the process by which an organism change its position or posture without external help. Also, that one is a definition. Then we have respiration. What is respiration? So the chemical reaction in cells that break down nutrient molecules and release energy for metabolism. That is what we call respiration. The key word here is release energy for metabolism. Can also be defined as the process that break down a food molecule to release energy, or the process by which a food nutrient is broken down to release energy. That is what we call respiration. So all living organisms should be able to respire and produce energy. Then what about sensitivity? So we've looked at movement, we've looked at respiration. Now, sensitivity or irritability. So is that simply the ability to detect and respond to changes in the internal or external environment? So the ability to detect. The key word here is detect. Now, what does it detect? Stimuli. Okay, so stimuli, we can just look at changes in the environment. That is what we call stimuli. It can be in terms of temperature, pressure, different. Okay, so organisms respond to stimuli. So all living organisms are sensitive. Then the other one is growth. What is growth? So this is just a permanent increase in size and dry mass. So the permanent increase in size and dry mass. So the key thing here, permanent increase, size, dry mass. That is what we call growth. So all living organisms are able to grow. We continue. Let us look at reproduction. Now, what is reproduction? So reproduction is just a process that makes more of the same kind of organism. The process that makes more of the same kind of organism. Or we can simply say the process by which organisms produce their young ones or offspring. That is what we call reproduction. Okay? So the key thing here, produce more of the same kind of organism. Then we have excretion. What is excretion? Now, when you hear of excretion, something should come to your mind. Removal of waste product of metabolism and substances in excess of requirement. That is what we call excretion. So excretion is simply the removal of waste products of metabolism and substances in excess of requirements. That is what excretion is. So all living organisms should be able to excrete. Then nutrition, otherwise known as also feeding. So nutrition also as feeding. So it's just taking in of materials for energy, growth, and development. Now, this is the process by which organisms make their own food. Okay, so the process by which organism produces glucose is what we call nutrition. Okay, so very important that you understand it in that line, because as we look at questions, you're going to see how a question comes. All right, so we've looked at the first part, that is characteristics of living organisms. So these are 7 characteristics that organisms possess for them to be categorized as living organisms. All right, let us look at now the concept and uses of classification. As you know, the first part that we are looking at is characteristics of living organisms and also classification of living organisms. Let us look at the concept of classification system. And this is also one of the important topics that you need to know, very important for exams. All right, so what do you need to know about these characteristics of living organisms? Now, one thing you should know that there are millions of species of organisms on Earth, or thousands of them on Earth. Now, these species need to be classified, or rather to be grouped. Now, what is a species? This is the key thing again that you need to understand. So you shouldn't miss the definition of a species. So species are a group of organisms that can reproduce to produce fertile offspring. This is the key word, or these are keywords. Species are a group of organisms that can reproduce to produce fertile offspring. Now, species can be classified into groups based on the features that they have in common, or common features, or organisms, or the close features that they have in common. So we are saying species can be classified in groups by features they share. What are the examples of organisms that we can look at here? For example, mammals. So what are the features that mammals share in common? So they give birth. So all the mammals are able to give birth. Then they have hair. They are warm-blooded, and also they breastfeed. Okay, so these are the features that mammals have closely. Then now maybe you can look at also birds. So birds also can be classified based on the features, or for organisms to be classified as birds, they should have certain features, such as they have feathers, then the other one, we can say they lay eggs, which are hard-shelled. So lay eggs. Then also we can talk of they have wings. Then we can talk of they have beaks. So these are some of the characteristics that birds have that enables us to classify them as birds, as we are going to look at this. Okay. Now, let us look at the binomial system. Let us focus our attention now to look at the binomial system. Now, what is this binomial system? So, this is just a system of naming species in which scientists, or the system of naming species. Now, in this case, scientists name an organism, or the name of an organism scientifically is made up of two parts. Okay, that is the genus and the species. So binomial system, we are saying, is just a system of naming species in which scientific name of an organism is made up of two parts, showing the genus and the species. Now, what is the main focus here? In classifying organism, take note of the genus and the species. So when it typed, these names are usually in italics, and that shows that they are Latin. Okay. For example, we have here the scientific name of a modern man is Homo sapiens. So the name usually starts with a capital letter, and of course is written in italics when typed, like I said, but the first part starts with a capital letter. For example, a modern man is Homo sapiens. Now, for this name, the first part is the genus, and now the other part is the species. Now, let me also put another one. Let's say Homo habilis. Homo habilis. Homo habilis, if that is a spelling, Homo habilis is old man. So in this case, we have the same genus, Homo. So the genus is the same, but species differ. So in the modern man, the genus is Homo, then species sapien. But the olden man, that is Homo habilis, the genus is still the same, Homo, but the species differ. So you are going to find questions such as you are given, let's say, Homo habilis, Homo sapiens, and other Homo. Then they ask you, what do they have in common? So Homo, it means they have same genus, but of course the end part, the species, they are different. Now, sometimes the question that you come, for example, you are given the name Homo habilis or any other name, then they ask you which one is the genus. So in this case, the genus is just the Homo. Then of course the species, if we're asked of a species, that is sapien in the case of the modern man. I guess I've explained a thing here, and this is what we are going to typically look at when we start looking at questions. I think we are going to handle questions of this or of that nature. Otherwise, if there's no problem up to this point, we can proceed, look at the other part. Okay, now let us focus our attention on what we call the dichotomous key. So we focus our attention on the part or on the dichotomous key. Now, what is this? So dichotomous keys are used to identify organisms based on the series of questions about their features. So in the question, you'll be given an organism, and of course, based on series of their features, you should be able to identify the organism. So I used to identify organisms based on the series of questions about their features. Now, dichotomous means branching into two. And now this helps us to identify the name of an organism by giving two descriptions at a time, as we are going to look at the question. So this dichotomous means branching into two, and this helps us identify the names of organisms by giving two descriptions at a time and asking you to choose one choice, and that leads to the next or to another two description until you end up with the name of an organism. I guess you've gotten something here. Now, here is an example. So here is an example from the past paper. The diagram below shows an animal. Use the key to identify. Remember, we are going to use the dichotomous key. Now, dichotomous key, we are saying it means, or dichotomous means branching into two. Now, this helps us to identify the name of an organism by giving two descriptions. So in the first part, you expect to find two descriptions of an organism, as you can see. So from what you are able to see, look at the description. First description, flat limbs with 5 fingers. Now, does the flat limbs have 5 fingers? So you can see it doesn't have 5 fingers, which means this description, it doesn't tally with what you are seeing. Now look at this, flat limbs with 4 fingers. Yes, it has 4 fingers. Now, that description that you've read would direct you where you're going to go next. So this one is say go to 3. So you're going to go to description number 3. Also, description number 3 has 2 options or 2 descriptions. So this one, yes, has 2 fingers, that is the flat limb, but tail with fins. Does the tail have fins? If it has, the answer is C. Tail without fins. If it doesn't, the answer is D. Now, fins are these extensions that you are able to see from the tail. These are what we call fins. So surely it has the fins. So the answer is C. Let me just go back again. The dichotomous keys are used to identify organisms based on series of questions about their features. So what you're able to see. Dichotomous simply means branching into two. This helps us identifying the name of an organism by giving 2 descriptions at the same time and asking you to choose. Each choice leads you to the next or the other 2 or description until you end up with the name of an organism. This is what we've just done here, and successively we have identified this organism, or the description that tally with this is answer C. So it doesn't come only in terms of animals, can be in terms of plants, can be in terms of that and all that. So you need to know that. All right, now let us look at classification. So these organisms now can be classified in 2 groups, and just for easy identification. So when you talk of the concept of classification, is just a system of putting things in groups. The main reason for this is just to make it easy to study them, okay, and easy identification. So that is the concept of classification. Now, traditionally, organisms were classified, or in the past, organisms were classified based on the features. I want you to get it very well here. In the past, or traditionally, organisms were classified based on the features they shared. The more features they had in common, the more closely related they were. But with the coming of technology, advancement, or with technological advancement, scientists have now resorted to use DNA sequence in classifying, or DNA sequence is the most effective way of classifying organisms as for now. So with technology advancement, scientists were able to study DNA sequences. Now, very important here, not base pairs or types of bases or whatsoever, but DNA sequences. I know I am emphasizing on this one because these are the questions that we are going to answer. So make sure that you know that DNA sequence is the one or the most effective approach to classifying organisms now. Okay, so this method now shows that the more similar the base sequence in DNA of the two species, the more closely related species are, and the more close their ancestor or they have the common ancestors. Pay attention. I've mentioned the word common ancestors. So if they have same bases, which means they have common ancestors. So that's one question you find again. Now, the first step to classify living organisms is to put them in 5 kingdoms. So in order to classify organisms, they are put in 5 kingdoms. What are the 5 kingdoms? So the 5 kingdoms of organisms are animals, plants, fungi, protists, and also you have prokaryotes. So these are 5 kingdoms that we are going to discuss. Let us start with the animal kingdom. So the many features used to place animals in their appropriate kingdom. So these are the ones that we are going to look at. So under each kingdom, we are going to look at their many features that makes them to be classified in those kingdom. That is mainly what we are going to focus on. So for animals, what features do they have or characteristics common to all animals? So one of the feature is that they are able to feed on already made food. So these feed on already made food. To be specific, they feed on food made by plants. And for that reason, they are also known as heterotrophs. They are multicellular, which means they have a lot of cells in the body. Not only one cell, they have lots of cells. Their cells have nucleus but no cell wall. So this is another thing that we are going to look at. So the cells of these, they do not have cell wall, but they have the nucleus, they have cytoplasm, they have the cell membrane, but without cell wall and nucleus. The common difference between the plant and the animal cell. Let us look at the animal cell. So this is the animal cell that we have here. Now, very important that we identify the parts. So this outer part is the cell membrane. So the outer part is the cell membrane. Then the inside part here is called the mitochondrion. So singular mitochondrion, but plural mitochondria. Then we have here the endoplasmic reticulum. So endoplasmic reticulum. Although these you find the rough and the smooth one. But at the moment we are just into identifying the parts. Then of course you have this called the nucleus. So this is the nucleus. Then you can identify these small tiny circular vessel or these circles as ribosomes. Okay, so these are called ribosomes. So basically these are some of the parts that you need to know about the animal cell. So all this is just about identifying the parts, as we are going to deal with this part under organization where we look at the functions of the parts. But for now, just identifying the parts. All right, so that is all about that. Though that is what you need to learn about the animal kingdom. So very important that you understand the animal kingdom. Of course, at some point we are going to have to look at it in detail, but for now, that is what we can look at in terms of features organisms have in common. Let us look at plants. What features do they have that enable them to be classified as plants or organisms to be classified as plants? So, their cell have chloroplast, cell wall. Okay? Their cell have chloroplast. They have chloroplast and cell wall, as well as the vacuole, which is a large vacuole. Then they make their own food, and for this reason, they are known as autotrophs. So they make their own foods and they are known as autotrophs. Now, labeling the parts, the outer part is the cell wall. So the outer part of the plant cell is called the cell wall. Then this, what we have is the nucleus. Then of course we have the vacuole, that central part. Then of course we have the chloroplast. So that is the chloroplast. Then we have this part, which is Golgi apparatus. Then we have still also the mitochondrion. Okay, mitochondrion. Then we have the endoplasmic reticulum. Let me just say ER, endoplasmic reticulum. Also, we have ribosomes. So these are some of the parts of a plant cell. Okay, but what you need to know are the major or characteristics. They have chloroplast, cell wall, and vacuole. Then they are autotrophs, meaning they make their own food. So these are characteristic features that enables us to classify these as plants. Let us look at fungi. So what characteristics enables us to classify organisms as fungi? So many features that use to place fungi in their appropriate kingdom. So they are multicellular. These are multicellular. They have nucleus. They have cell that has nucleus, cell wall, although their cell wall for this is not made of cellulose. So this is also another thing. They have cell wall, but not made of cellulose, instead made of chitin, glucan, or glucoproteins. Then they feed on dead decaying matter, and therefore they are known as saprophytes. So very important. Example of fungi that we can look at is mushroom. So this is the cell that you are able to see here. As you can see, we have the mitochondria. This is tiny to see. We have the vacuole, we have the cytoplasm, the cell wall, we have the nucleus there. So this is the cell or the fungi cell. All right, let us look at the protoctics. These features or many features that enables us to classify organisms in this kingdom. One, they are unicellular, although some are multicellular. They have the nucleus. They may have cell wall, or they have cell wall that may or may not have chloroplast. So some of them, they do not have chloroplast. Some of them, they have chloroplast. Okay, they have cell wall rather. They have cell wall. Then they have what? Chloroplast. Okay. Then some get nutrients by making their own food by photosynthesis. Here, the explanation here is that they both have cell wall, but some they have chloroplast, some they not have chloroplast. And that's the reason why we are saying others make their own food while others get already made food by feeding on other living organisms. So this is the cell that we are able to see here. So this is the cell wall outside. Okay, this large one, we can put it as the nucleus. As you can see, the red one, we can put mitochondrion. Then this one, we can put the cell wall outside. I can put this one as the nucleus. Then I can put this tiny one as the ribosomes. Then of course, yeah, I think basically these are the parts that we need to look at. So very important that you know the characteristic features of organisms under this part. Then let us look at prokaryotes. So many features used to place prokaryotes in appropriate kingdom, characteristics common to all prokaryotes. An example that we look at here are bacteria. So what characteristic that they have in common? So often they are unicellular, which means made of only one cell. They have cell wall, but not made of what? Cellulose. They have cell wall, but not made of cellulose, as well as the cytoplasm. But they do not have, this is very important, they do not have nucleus or mitochondria. Now, this that you are seeing inside here is just the genetic material. So this is the DNA strand. So if I were to label this, this is the DNA strands. So they do not have the nucleus. Then, of course, you can talk of the, we're saying they do not have the nucleus and also mitochondrion. So you can put, I can put the secular thing, which are called plasmid. Okay. These are normally used in the genetic modification. Then, of course, there's a cell membrane, which is the inside part, cell membrane. Then we have the cell wall, which is the outer part, cell wall, which does not have the nucleus. Then you have the tail here, which is called the flagella. Okay. These are the parts of the bacterial cell, as we are going to look at this when you start looking at organization, and it's very important that you know the parts, especially the plasmid. Very important. All right, so that is basically, or these are the kingdoms that we can look at. Now, let us look at the animal kingdom in detail. So classification within the animal kingdom. So these are, or this is the detailed part of the animal kingdom. Now, the animal kingdom can be classified into major groups. So major groups into animal kingdom classification. So basically can be classified into two. So animals can be classified as vertebrate or invertebrate. Then under this, we are going to look at even subdivision. So majorly animals can be classified as vertebrates or invertebrates. Now, what does it mean, vertebrates and invertebrates? That is something that we are going to know. Now, let us look at what is found under the vertebrates. So what is found under the vertebrates? You find mammals, you find birds, you find fish, you find amphibians, and you find reptiles. So these we are going to discuss them in detail one by one, and very important that you understand each and every part. Then we have the invertebrates, where you find insects, myriapods, we have crustaceans, we have arachnids. So these we are going to discuss them as well one by one, and very important that you understand each of these sub-classification or subdivision of the invertebrates. All right, let us start looking at the vertebrates. So what are vertebrates? So what makes the organisms to be classified as vertebrates is, do they have backbones? Okay, so vertebrates, in other words, these are organisms that have backbones. Okay, they have backbones. These are called vertebrates. Now, there are 5 major groups or 5 groups or classes of vertebrates. Like we've already seen from this, mammals, birds, fish, amphibians, and reptiles. So these are what we're going to look at. So 5 groups of or classification of vertebrates. We have mammals, we have birds, we have reptiles, we have amphibians, we have fish. So we're going to look at this one by one. Let us look at mammals. So I think we've just looked at part of it where we are coming from. We have an idea of what we expect on mammals. So mammals, these are just organisms that breastfeed their young ones. Okay, so characteristics of mammals, one, we are saying they have different types of teeth, which are incisors, canines, molar, and premolar, or incisors, canines, premolar, and molar. So all the mammals, they have 4 different types of teeth. That is incisors, canines, premolar, and molar. So these characteristics enables us to classify these as mammals. They have fur or hair. So mammals have fur or hair. For example, humans, they have hair, and of course, when you talk of the cow and all that, they have fur. So these that you are seeing here are examples of mammals. Now, young ones feed on milk from mammary gland, so they are able to breastfeed their young ones. The heart are made up of 4 chambers. So animals, the heart is made up of 4 chambers. That is the atria and the ventricle or ventricles. All right, I guess there's no problem up to this point. So please, if you've enjoyed the lesson up to this point, do not forget to subscribe and also get to share with others so that even as we learn, we don't leave out anyone behind. Let us look at birds. So what are characteristics that enables us to classify things as birds? So 1, feather. So major classification is feather. So they have feather. All the animals have feather. As you can see from the pictures here, at least all the animals have feather. They have eggs with hard shells. So these, they lay eggs with the hard shells. Then they have beak, okay, which is just the mouth of the bird. This is what we call the beak. So they have beak. Then they have wings, okay, instead of what? 4 limbs. So they have wings instead of 4 limbs. So these wings. So all the birds have wings. So these are major features that enables us to classify birds as birds. And question do comes, you are given, let's say, a picture, and they ask you which of the characteristics enables you to identify or to classify the organism or whatever is shown that is a bird as a bird. So you have among the answers maybe forelimbs, you have feather, maybe you have toes or whatsoever. But you need to know that these features are the ones that puts birds in their classes. Then let us look at reptiles. So characteristics that enables you to identify organisms as reptiles. So they have scale skin. So their skin is scaly. Then they lay eggs with rubbery shells, not hard shell, but rubbery shell. Examples, we can look at crocodiles and snake. Okay, so these are examples of reptiles. But as you study, make sure that you dig deeper beyond this. Otherwise, basically, this should be able to take you in an exam and, of course, be able to score an A+. All right, what about amphibians? So amphibians, characteristics as well, that enables us to classify these as amphibians. So one, they live on both land and water. They have moist skin without scales. Listen, moist skin without scales. Then they lay eggs in water. The larva or tadpole live in water, so they have gills. In other words, tadpoles have gills. Adults live on land, therefore they have gills, or they have lungs. Okay, so here should have said lungs, please. So they live on land and therefore they have what? Lungs. So very important that you make that correction as you are going through this particular lesson. So these are characteristics that enables us to classify organisms as amphibians. Let us look at fish. So what are the characteristics that enables us to classify things as fish? So one, they have shells on their skin. So they have they have scales on their skin. Then they have gills, so they breathe through gills. And of course they have fins, as you can see. Dorsal fins, all those fins are there. So you have fins. And of course, these are examples of fish that you are able to see right here on this presentation. So very important that you understand this in detail. And this is, I think this information will take you in an exam. All right, so that was about animals, or 5 groups of animals. Let us pay attention now, or focus our attention on invertebrates. Now, what separates invertebrates from vertebrates? Vertebrates, we said they have backbones. So here, the opposite is true. They do not have backbones. Okay? Examples of invertebrates, we look at arthropods. So arthropods are examples of invertebrates, and they have jointed legs. What are the many classifications of arthropods? So we have meropods, we have insects, we have arachnids, and we have crustaceans. So these are the ones that we are going to discuss under invertebrates. All right, what about meropods? What are the characteristics that enables us to classify organisms as meropods? So one, they have segmented legs with at least a pair of jointed legs at each segment. So body have segmented or have many segments, as you can see here. Then each segment has jointed leg, okay, or legs. Okay, so this is very important that you understand this. So they have many segments, as you can see from the organisms that we have here. Some of these you are familiar with them. And each organism has jointed legs. Each segment has jointed legs. So characteristics of meropods: one, they have many segments. Each segment has segmented legs. So very important that you understand this. Okay, what about insects? So the other one that you can look at are insects. So characteristics of insects. So please make sure that you understand the characteristics, because as we look at the question, you are going to understand that actually what we have looked at is actually what you find in the questions. So characteristics of insects, we have body is divided into 3 pairs or segment, that is the head, thorax, and the abdomen. Then they have 3 pairs of jointed legs. So these have 3 pairs. So specifically 3 pairs. We are going to find those that have 4 pairs, more than 4 pairs. So make sure that you know that for insect, 3 pairs. This should stick in your mind. 3 pairs of legs. Then they have 3 pairs of jointed legs. Okay, so 3 pairs of jointed legs is another characteristic. So please, the first one I said body segmented into 3 pairs or 3 parts: head, thorax, and the abdomen. Then in terms of legs, they have also 3 pairs of legs. Then they have 2 pairs of wings. So very important that also you understand 2 pairs of wings, 3 pairs of legs, body segmented into 3 parts. These are very important that you understand them. Examples of insects that you have here, you can see the butterfly, you can see the grasshoppers, you can see all these insects that we have here as they have 3 pair of legs. These are not legs. These are not legs. So very important that you understand that this is not a leg, but the legs are 1, 2, and another one hiding there, which is the 3. 1, 2, 3. Then also this one, 1, 2, 3. All these you can see 1, 2, 3. Very important. Let us look at the arachnids. Characteristics of these. So they have 4 pair of jointed legs. Remember, insect is 3, but for these 4 pairs of legs. Example, you can talk of a spider and also the scorpion. So these have 4 pairs of jointed legs. Keyword 4 pairs. Don't forget. They breathe through the gills called book lungs. So they breathe through gills called book lungs. So very important that you understand this as well. But just by looking at the picture, you should be able to count the jointed legs. So 1, 2, 3, 4. And on the other side 4. So pair, we are counting 1 pair, 2 pair, 3 pair, 4 pair. So this one, 1 pair, 2 pair, 3 pair, 4 pair. So both have 4 pair of jointed legs. Crustaceans, what can we say about crustaceans? So characteristics of these, as you can see, they have more than 4 pair of legs. So these, they have more than 4 pair of legs or jointed legs, and they breathe through gills. As you can see here, crabs and lobster are examples. So more than 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So we have 5, 5, which means pair 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So 5 pair of legs. So more than 4 pair of legs, we are looking at crustaceans. Very important that you understand these characteristics. If you do, exams is just going to be a walkover. All right, let us look at now detailed classification of plant kingdom. We've just looked at the detailed classification of animal kingdom. Let us look at the detailed classification of the plant kingdom. So also plants can be classified, or major classification of plants are those plants that are non-flowering plants and flowering plants. Examples of non-flowering plants are ferns. Then of course, flowering plants, we are going to look at those that reproduce by producing flower, produce fruits, and all those. So non-flowering and flowering plants. Then now, the flowering plant is further subdivided into monocot and dicot. So we have dicotyledon and monocotyledon based on the cotyledons of their seeds. Okay, let us look at ferns. So characteristics of ferns. So ferns, they have leaves called fronds. Okay, they have leaves called fronds. Then they do not reproduce by producing flower. Instead, they produce by spores. Okay, they produce by spores. So you find tiny, tiny dots on these leaves. That is how they reproduce. They produce spores. They produce, or they reproduce by spore formation. So characteristics of ferns, they have leaves called fronds. They do not produce flowers. They produce by spores. So this picture, make sure that you have it in mind, because in the exam questions, these are the things that you have or you find. Okay, make sure that you have the picture, how it looks and all that. Let us look at flowering plants. So characteristics of flowering plants, we said these are the ones that produces seeds. So they produce by means of seeds. So they produce by means of seeds. Seeds are produced inside the ovary in the flowers. Then of course, flowering plant can be divided into two, like how we've already seen where we are coming from, monocot and dicot. So these are examples of monocot. As you can see this part, so this is the monocot. Then on the other side, you are seeing a dicot. Now, let us look at it in more details. So, monocot and dicot. So, this is the sub part, but here, this part, which means what is down here is monocots. Then, of course, what is this side is dicots. Now, let us look at the monocots in terms of their roots. So in terms of their roots, as you can see, this is scattered, should I say, or fibrous. So they have fibrous root system. So for the monocot, they have fibrous root system. Then they have what we call tap root system. So fibrous root system, it means there is no many roots where these other small roots are coming from. Instead, they emerge from the many trunk. But for taproot system, as you can see, there's a many root going down, but branching, or we have some small roots branching. That is what we call the taproot system. Then this is the fibrous. So in other words, in monocot, you have fibrous root system, but in dicot, you have what we call a taproot system. Then in terms of their leaves, if you find the leaf of the monocot, it has parallel venation. In other words, the veins are parallel. Okay, parallel venation, as you can see from here. Parallel venation. These dark stuff are veins. So veins are parallel. So parallel venation. So here you have parallel venation. So in the monocot, you have parallel venation. Then here, as you can see, the veins are branching. So this is what we call net venation. So here you have what? Net venation. So that is something that you should understand. Then when it comes to flowers, contain petals in the multiple of 3. So contain, this one you can say contain petals in the multiple of 3. What it means multiple of 3 can be 3 petals. Petals are just this. These are petals. The colored part of the flower are called petals. So they are in the multiple of 3. So it can be 3, from 3, 6, 6, 9. So multiples of 3. But for the other one, contain petals. So this one contain petals. So contain petals in the multiple of 4 or 5. So as you can see, this one has how many? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So it can be 5, 10. So petals in the multiple of 5, petals in the multiple of 3. These characteristics are very important. I've seen questions on these parts. Make sure that you understand this very part, very important. Now, finally, we can look at the viruses. Now, of all living organisms, viruses, as we can see, they are not in any group because these are not deemed to be living organisms. So viruses are not considered to be living organisms or living things since they cannot carry out the 7 life processes on their own. What are 7 life processes? Respiration, movement, nutrition, that is Mrs. Grain. And therefore, they are not part of any classification system. They can only take another living cell in order to make in order for them to make their own copy. So as you can see the virus here. So what is important here is to understand the part of the virus. So what is important is the genome. So the middle part that you are able to see there is the DNA or the genome. Then, of course, around it, you have some protein coat. So this is the protein coat. So the protein coat is the one that is very important. The genome of the virus is found is surrounded by the protein code. So basically, this brings us to the end of the lesson, the first topic or chapter 1, characteristics of living organisms. And I hope you have gained much insight to help you to understand or to handle questions from the exams. Okay, so now that we are done with the topic, we can now go into the question, that is answering questions. Like I said, we are going to answer questions, specifically paper 2 questions from the extended, that is multiple choice questions on this particular topic. So let us look at the questions.